Good morning. Good morning to your dog.
Oh, yes. She doesn't like being in the kitchen.
Oh, is she locked in the kitchen? Is that the you?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Her heart.
Oh, that's okay. She does it all the time.
I know my dog.
I have a gate, then she'll shut the gate and you lock herself in there.
Oh. Okay. I don't know what I've done with my phone. So my alarms are not going to work today. All right, got to keep on to it. How is everybody?
Not too bad.
Good. Cody, are you ready for camp?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
And
Gotta pack still, but you know how men pack. We pack last minute, so.
yes, my husband, we had one huge fight on our vacation, and that is I packed 2 extra shirts and a pair of jeans and an extra sweater for him. And he repeatedly told me that 64 years old, he was capable of packing for himself. And I told him for 23 days that 2 shirts was not enough.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Sure it was. As long as you don't spill anything on them.
I know. And then it got to where, does this smell? Of course it smells. How many days have you been wearing it? Yeah. But I brought whatever that wrinkle release is that also has nice freshening scent to it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, good morning, Jean. It's wonderful to see your face again. And you are muted, so I cannot hear you. Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute. I can't. Let's see. I'm not able to unmute you. It's always such a pain to find that little button.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now.
You're unmuted now. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Yay. Okay, so first order of business, kind of maybe hopefully my only order of business, is that From Hope to Habits still is not being accepted by Amazon for sizing purposes. It's all about sizing. And while we figured 8.5 by 11, that's pretty standard size, right? No, it has to be something like 8 3/4 by some, I think it may be by 11. So I asked Bill, well, can you, because it's in PDF, can you just go in there and extend the box by 1/4 inch, just make it bigger? And he said something about the table of contents. So he's going to go in there and try that. This is the 3rd round now of editing. And if not, then he has to put it into a completely different program that he can manipulate it. It's a professional publishing program that he uses. So I have just finished an announcement that if you all can't access this, I really don't know how announcements work on our platform. But if I've put the book up there now in a PDF through the announcements, and hopefully you'll be able to download that. I know it's color heavy. I thought it would look really cool for print publishing, but it's I know very cumbersome. So if you do print, which you have to print it out, do it in grayscale is my recommendation.
I printed the first ones out in color, and then I was like, nah, I'm just gonna do black and white from here on out.
So, honestly, I haven't printed it out in color. I've only seen it in color on my computer. Yeah. It would be really, I do it in draft in grayscale, black and white. Okay. And my one request that is, I really hope you'll use it in your congregations, or at least propose it to be used in your congregations. But I ask that you not make copies of it, except, download it for yourself. You can, show people in your church, decision makers, that you would need that for permission. But yeah, I want to guard my copyright on it. It's already copyright we bought the copyright, but just to make sure. Okay, so what are you thinking about this past week?
I thought it went well. I was, I made myself focus this week on making sure that I did it every week or every day, and it went really well.
Good.
So
Remind me which discipline you used or habit you
the
used.
prayer of examine.
That's right. That's right.
And the first, see, I wrote a prompt down. I wrote the prompts down on a sticky note and put it on my Bible so I could do it before I do my Bible reading each morning. And the first time I did it, I kept pausing my prayer to look at the prompts. So
Uh-huh.
it kind of took away, but I the next time I did it, I was like, okay, here I'm going to look at the prompts first, and then so I can stay focused on the prayer the whole time. So the next 3 days went a lot smoother. So
Cool. Good learning. Good
yeah.
learning. Um, in Bill's one of the books, I think it's the second one, High Voltage. He talks about, I think it's in his book, about the prayer of examine and then the projection. So he'll call them reflection and projection. So in the morning you project into your day, right? And
Mhm.
then at the end of the day, it's kind of that examine where you reflect back
Yeah.
on the day. Yeah, it's a good habit, discipline. Let's see, Jean, which
Yes,
remind me which practice you used.
I'm doing painting a prayer this week,
Right, that's
and
right.
and it's going wonderfully well because of course, during the summertime, I have my great grandchildren and all kinds of company. I have people from Washington here right now too, but we've started our paint a prayer, and we did it outside in the patio, and it's been wonderful because these children are so willing to learn and do everything right, and so we sang the Lord's Prayer first to start with. It was not exactly too musical because we each sang our own version of it, and but as we talked about prayer, and the littlest one, who is 9, she talked about how her favorite place is to pray, and so that led into a long discussion while we painted. The paintings are not anywhere near finished because we spent more time visiting and laughing, but we did have a long prayer session, and it was beautiful.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome. You're making me think I'm gonna have our youngest grandson for the next week and a half while his mom and dad and big brothers go to Europe for that time. So the kiddo is so creative. Until just a year or so, he would go and tear paper up. And while we were there, he had his own little construction or art closet. They turned a hall closet, a coat closet into Aiden's art closet, and he's very indulged in their home. And but he'd rip paper and make all kinds of neato things. He loves to paint and draw. So he's too smart. If he's an old soul, and this kid, for years now, we've had very theological conversations, and he had an argument 2 years ago in going in 4th grade about whether Jesus and God were the same, he and a friend of his. And so they found me in the hallways of the school to ask me. And he was very distressed when I told him that, well, actually he is. I was like, we'll have to talk about this on the way home today. But anyways, I thought, oh, we're when we're all together, we always say grace around the table. We move that around and we get to him. He doesn't tend to like to pray outside, but that kid, again, he's got this spiritual side that's amazing. So I'm going to see if he wants to paint a prayer and where that goes, or paper a prayer or something. Thank you for that inspiration.
I think it's funny that you talked about you sang it in your own, you sang the Lord's Prayer in your own way, because I think sometimes we get so focused on Sunday mornings, we say the prayer in unison together. And if you say it in a different church, you always get to that line of sins, debtors, or trespassers, and everybody just kind of gets quiet because you don't want to say the wrong thing. And I think it's so funny that we try to make that prayer a unison prayer when it wasn't intended to be that in the first place.
Right. I really agree with that. And
Yeah.
I had one of my grandsons when he was probably 10 or 12. And in his family, his mother is a Catholic and his daddy is a Methodist. And they actually spent all of their growing up years going to alternate churches from Sunday to Sunday.
Wow.
So the children were very versed in the Catholic Church. They were very versed in the Methodist Church. And then they would come to visit Grandma and Grandpa. And before we walked into the church, Parker said, "Now, Grandma, please tell me one more time, what am I supposed to say in your church? Because every church is different." And so he wanted to make sure he said the right words. And we had that same discussion. You say
Right.
the words that it means to you. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
we don't care which word to use. But he was very concerned that he knew that it was done differently in different places.
Mhm. I would like that it says, this is how you pray. This isn't what you pray.
Right, exactly.
Oh, Cindy's coming in here twice. This will be interesting. Okay. Shelley, remind me which prayer or practice you used?
I'm doing Psalms this week.
That's right. Okay. And that question again, are you able to read them every day? You know, how's that going?
I forgot when I picked that, and I was going to listen to it on the way to work, that I was on vacation this week. So I've been doing it in the evening, and it's going really well. And I'm still, while I'm in the Bible, I'm still reading Tobit and just adding a few extra things in with it.
Neato. I like that. Well, I'm catching what you just said about you were going to listen to it on the way home or
Yes.
work, right? Your life, but that you still stuck with it, and you still stuck with it despite that plan.
Yes.
And it not exactly working as you projected.
Such is my life.
Well, it is about flexibility, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's also about commitment, you know, and not switching up. You know, in that case, it would have been more than okay to switch up, right? But a lot of times when I've led this study, or when the first time I wrote it for a church in Kansas City, a Presbyterian church, if I'm not mistaken. And I got a call from the minister who said, "Well, this person wanted to switch it up, you know, midweek. Is that okay?" No. You practice it, because, you know, with all practices, we may not like something up front, but it may be the practice that we need. And and not all practices work for all of us, but if we don't stick with it and we make excuses right into it, then we'll never. Yeah. I don't journal, and it took me a lot of journaling and to do that. And finally, my spiritual director said, "It's just yours. You know, don't beat yourself. Here's another practice that you might like." Labyrinths. I have friends that are trained in labyrinth facilitation. They love working labyrinths and would do it every day if they could. And I have a love-hate relationship with labyrinths. 9 times out of 10, I started with all will, you know, and with all openness. And then the argument with God begins. Why am I doing this? I hate this. And then it's with myself. Forget God. He's definitely there listening in. It's like, "Why did you do this again? You know how much you hate to do it. Blah, 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 blah." Pay attention. Just one foot after the other. Just keep going. Just keep going. Okay, God, I'm going. Here we are. And then after so many of the tracks, you know, you track back and forth and then it's, "Oh, okay, my spirit is, just calm down. And then I get to that center, and even before, because then the spirit has been talks to me and I'm ready to listen. That's how I want to say it, is that then I'm ready to listen. And I always come out of there a different place with a message I never even thought that I would get. Yeah, my heart's been called out for labyrinth walking of late. We have one, those of you that are here near Columbia, Rockbridge Christian Church has a labyrinth, and it's a small one, but I used to stop by there every now and again. I haven't been by there in years, but I've driven by Rockbridge a couple of times in the last few months, and I've thought, oh, I need to make time to do that. And then Boone Hospital, across the street from Boone Hospital, across the street on Broadway, there's William Street. So if you were going down Walnut or up Walnut from Stevens Park, it's just buried there, but it's on, what would that be? The southeast corner of William and that's Walnut. It's not, isn't it Walnut? Walnut Ash. I'm pretty sure it's Walnut. It's either Walnut or Ash. But if you were at Stevens Park, I know only two of you know where this is, or maybe you know, but if you were on Stevens Park,
Mhm.
and you head west there on Walnut or Ash.
Yeah, I'm terrible at street names too.
No, I get those confused. I'm pretty sure, in fact, I do know it is Walnut. And Walnut is the street that runs on the front side of First Christian Church, Columbia.
Yeah.
And you get down there a few blocks, it's William Street. There is a stop sign there, and you want to turn on William towards Boone Hospital. There's a parking lot across the street on your right, and
Yeah.
it is a lovely labyrinth in the size and the shape of the one in Chartres in France, which is I think the first one that they discovered, or it was a big deal when they realized under all of those chairs and seats in the cathedral of Chartres, there was this thing called a labyrinth.
Yeah. My first experience with the labyrinth was at camp, and we had it's called a night of silence, where we just go to a whole bunch of prayer stations, and for 2 hours you don't talk at all. You're just with the spirit. And it was, I'm a person who, you don't know anything about me, I like to talk. So I went into this activity going, there's no way I can be silent for 2 hours. But they had all these different stations, and it was really cool. And we do it every year at camp. So but one of the stations was a labyrinth, and we walked through it, and at the center we all sat down and prayed together silently, and it was just a really powerful thing. But it took me a little while to realize that as you're going along the path, there's sometimes where you're really close to the center, and there's sometimes where you're really far away from the center. And it's so much like our walk with Christ.
Thank you. Was
Yeah.
it the canvas one? Was it the canvas labyrinth?
Yes. Yeah.
My husband made that.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
actually our labyrinth. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's being held at Broadway right now. I'm not sure,
Okay.
but it's so big. It has to be in 2 cooler boxes, and
Yeah.
I can't pick it up. We had to put it in 2 because it's so heavy.
Right.
It's dyed into canvas.
Hmm.
One of our churches in Seattle, it's where our church plant actually planted into this church. They dyed a labyrinth into the rug in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And they opened it every Friday, I think it was, to the public. People could come, and
It's cool.
their worship minister took and had candles around the different places so people could pause and
Yeah.
light a candle, rest, and there was communion in the middle of it.
Oh, that's really neat.
It was really cool. You have great memories of labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Cindy.
Hi.
She goes, thank you for your perseverance. At one point, there were 3 of you on this
Well,
screen coming in.
I was trying on the computer and I had the same trouble in church history class. One week it would work, the next week it wouldn't. And so the iPad works, here I am.
Yay, I'm glad. Remind us of the practice you've been practicing.
The prayer. Yeah, and I didn't go by what I said in the discussion. I did it. Well, there were some days, 3 days or 3 times in a row, morning, noon, and night. But I've said I was going to do it at bedtime, and I started out the day with it, and then would end with at night. But there was a couple of days I even went to it at noon. The day was getting a little rough.
Good for you for turning to it.
I do have another miracle, guys. Last night, my neighbor come knocking on my door at 9 o'clock, and you got to understand that the property where she lives is where I took care of an older lady for 23 years.
Wow.
So I know a lot about the property and the house, and have, I thought I'd given her all of my keys. Well, she locked herself out. And so I took this old set of keys, all rusty and all this, and we took them down and tried them on the front door, and didn't work. And I mean, if you saw the keys, it's like some of these mechanics that you see walking around in a hospital or something. It's a whole group. Well, we went down to the other door, and I tried, and I got to this one, and I just go, God, please. And it just clicked and turned and opened. And the lady that was visiting with her, when we got in the house, she said that this just has to be a miracle. It has to be a miracle. And I said, yes, because I just asked God to do it. So we did. I do have miracles every week, it seems like.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
God is still in business. Just,
I don't know why we're so stubborn and have to do it ourselves first, though.
because we're humans.
Yeah.
God should be the first resort, but a lot of times he's the last.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's part of that adolescent.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
Now you're going to get leading into where I've got a couple of questions.
Uh-oh. Okay. Toss
Yeah.
it.
The Fowler is really confusing me, because first of all, the question I have to ask is he talking literal age, or is he talking like in development of age? We could be an adult and only be a toddler.
That's
Which way
right.
is it?
He's talking developmental. That's why he draws on Piaget, Kohlberg, Erickson. They're developmental psychologists. And Fowler's work is the first work talking about faith and faith development. And that's why I make us read it and study it, is because it is the work. It's the seminal work, and continues to be the standard around faith development, not just Christian faith development, but he's able to apply it across faith, a variety of faiths, and it was tested out against that. But again, it's not just a minister talking about Christian faith and walking through, we were born, we're baptized, we do these things, and then we make confirmation, and then our tradition is we get stunted at profession of faith, and we disciples our baptism as a sign of that confession, and or readiness, right, for our baptism, and that's it. We've arrived. So we have been in the church wonderful at creating Christians, but not disciples. And we forget that Jesus called disciples, not Christians. And so there's that piece of that. But then Fowler comes along and says, this isn't about your age. We've been thinking ages and stages. We really need to get to stages. And yeehaw, if you draw on these psychologists and specialists in developmental human development, we can apply that now into faith development.
Okay, that helped a whole lot, because I kind of skipped ahead in the syllabus to see what the final assignment was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, well, if I choose somebody, they may be an adult, but they're an infant in their discipleships or spiritual. So I was really confused, because he keeps going with 1 to 2 years and then 3 to 7 and all this. And so now I got it now.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And my thinking is it's an adult that you use. I mean, that is my intention. So I want you all to choose an adult. I will say that one of the biggest pushbacks I've gotten over the years of that assignment is that people want to go talk to the adult and want to do an interview, and they want them to know what they're doing, and that makes it really hard. I'm sorry, I think you're an infant in your faith, so let's talk about. We don't do that. And this is calling us as religious leaders, ministers, whether we're in an official minister position, right? We're in a ministry position, and of looking at people, and we're assessing people all the time, right? Or should you be on a board? Should you be an elder? I mean, we're doing that. And hopefully through your studies with more and more discernment, or a better ability to discern, and to be doing that from a discernment, not just, we need another warm body, and you've been off the board for a year, so you can be an elder again. Should you even be an elder? I mean, that's always one of my questions. Do you have a calling to be an elder? That's within our tradition, both as a religion, back to the scriptures, but also as disciples. We didn't have ordained ministers at first. The Campbells railed against having ordained ministers. They had elders, and elders were the ministers, what we would equate with ministers.
Well, that's what we did with just recently, because we haven't initiated them yet, but we've added a couple, 3 people. And in our elder group meeting, there was nominations from the congregation. And then we, as the elders, had to, you might say, assess them and say, why would you say that they're qualified to do this? So that's kind of what you're talking about, I think.
Exactly. And I am so grateful that you all use that method. So few churches do. Ray of Hope in Decatur, Georgia, I don't know if they're still doing it, so I can only speak to what they did. And I'd be surprised, honestly, if they weren't, but they interview, they talk to, they ask the congregation. They're still within the top 5 in size of disciples congregations. And that's one of the ways that they generate not interest, but there's so many people. How on earth do you know who all is out there? So they ask the congregation, they're asking leaders for those names, and they're qualifying questions, I guess, that go with that. But then they interview them, and everybody is brought in for an interview, and they're looking at their gifts, their interests. What do you bring to this position? And it's not, are you worthy or not? Sometimes it is, but I mean, there's an aspect of that. But are you ready for that position? Do you belong better in another position? And so I'll say this in that regard. One thing is, not everybody does well in the position they're in. So you may have somebody who is just flunking out as a children's Sunday school teacher, and the reality is they don't have gifts for teaching. Maybe it's children or whatever. Maybe they'll do better in an adult setting. But Ephesians 4:11 and following, he's given the gifts for teaching, others for preaching, others for evangelism, others are apostles. Apostles are those that we send out Some of them are starting churches. Those are missionaries, whether foreign or domestic. And what's the fifth one? Some are called to be shepherds and pastors. And again, I'll refer to disciples, and I can take it scripturally for you as well. I mean, right there in Acts 6, when they call the first deacons, right? There's the fight going on about who's taking care of the widows and the orphans, and who's getting priority, and wham. And the apostles step up and they're like, you know what? Our job is to pray and to teach. That's, let's just be clear about this. So we're going to appoint some deacons for you. And the deacon's role is to make sure the people are being fed, that these details are all being taken care of. And so they appoint, I believe it's 7 men is what they do. And just as an aside, I love Stephen is the first martyr for the faith. And Stephen is one of those deacons. And if you'll notice, he's not just serving, right? I mean, he is, but he makes a witness that gets him killed, right? He goes out there and he's like, come on, y'all. So, we think, oh, deacons, they just serve communion. Maybe they take communion in some churches, but hello, they're out there, they're doing their own bits of preaching. Okay, so elders, there's a tradition in a lot of congregations where elders are responsible for shepherding people in the congregation, right? That may be in one of your churches. So if you're an elder, you're supposed to make certain calls during the week, over the course of the month, or go visit people and whatnot. And what I have found over and over again, not all elders have the gift of shepherding. And so I pastored in one church where that was the case. And every month you'd come and there would be the usual 3 elders, and you were supposed to bring back any pastoral cares, right? So the elders knew. Really, it was kind of gossip, because if you really cared, you'd know. And or, hey, let me get everybody to pray for this person, even though I saw them 20 days ago. Like, is it something we should be doing now or not? So anyways, they would come back, but the same 3 or 4 people would be reporting. And the ones who did not have this gift of shepherding, they're asking questions of these people, so they never have to get down to sharing themselves. And finally, I caught on after a few months of watching that, and it was, you know what? Some of you have the gift of teaching, right? And some of you have this gift. And quite honestly, again, scripturally and within the traditions of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, the question is about teaching and prayer, actually. So where are you in that? And shepherding really becomes it is a deacon's role. So just keeping that in mind with nominations is important. And it was at that church, and I'm really proud of this. It was the last full-time church where I pastored. We did spiritual gifts, and we took the results of all the spiritual gifts and we put them into a database. And so we had for every member, except for those who refused, like we had long timers that refused to do spiritual gifts. But everybody else, and when you were a new member, it was just part of, or wondering if you were going to become a new member, we did 3 classes. And it was during one of those we did spiritual gifts assessment. And so then we databased them. And so in our office, we had names with each of the gifts. Was it 20 gifts that we looked at, and then went through and said, okay, what gifts are needed for elderhood? What gifts are needed for deaconhood? What gifts for, teaching this? And so then we put that back through. And we also had experience not just in the church, but life experience. And so, but anyways, then they'd run a search. Okay, we need elders. And so they'd run a search and they'd pull out those who had those gifts. And then we would check back against, if we had enough that we were making choices that we had to begin to choose and prioritize calling, then we would add in experience. And experience, really what we were looking for has this been a good experience for you? Did you have fruit in that in that position or not?
Well, lately, I'm elder chair. So lately we've, well, like I say, we're going to have new elders. So we're changing our shepherding list. But I've been working on that a little bit in that at the last elder meeting, I asked them to bring their shepherd's list. And there was 2 or 3 that didn't, meaning that they couldn't even find it probably. But the other thing, some of my elders are saying that it's instruction or experience that they're needing. So I have developed some role playing where, like for homebound and serving communion, and because a lot of my elders haven't even served behind the table other than just the prayer, and it's written prayer when they do. So Chance and I are trying to get people to more impromptu prayer. You know, you might be called up there at the table at any time type thing, or maybe you have a hospital visit, that sort of thing. So we've been doing a little bit more of role playing and trying to get them more. They may have the gift, but it's hidden, you know, that type of thing.
That is so cool. Cody, I don't know if you were there or if you remember, and Cindy, you may remember when I was in the regional minister that we would do, we called them road shows, and we'd go out to, every 3 months, we'd go out to each cluster. And so then each road show had 3 different workshops that you could go to. You didn't have to go to all of them. And we brought in ministers and lay people in that particular area. Generally, we had like Ken Watson at that time was like the resident expert in disciples history. And so we got him, we were able to bribe him to go with us to 3 of the 5, one of those times. Anyways, it was there at Cairo Jacksonville that just oh come on, Jody Jackson.
Yes. Yeah.
He did a session on prayer, and he talked to us about the parts of prayer. And so, you know, the pieces of prayer that you would want in. And then he had a jar, and in the jar were all these different situations in which you might be called on to pray. So there was, you know, with a child, there was an emergency in a home or hospital or at the table. And so you picked out one of the scenarios, and you had 5 minutes to jot down or write a prayer. He may have given us 3 minutes, and then he went back and we put in all the different scenarios, because he had more scenarios than there were people, and he mixed them all those up, and then he just started pulling them out, and he'd say, "Let us pray," and that person was on the spot, and they said the prayer for it.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, you said role play, and I remember that. Oh my gosh, he died of COVID within the last couple years, and I loved that man from the moment I met him. I told him if I were able to have a minister from all the ministers in Missouri, he would be my pastor.
He was a really good at what he did, and just a really good person in general.
Sweet spirit. Okay. So that answers that question. I went off on this massive tangent. Did you have another question, Cindy?
No, that the answer to the first one answered the second one. Perfect.
Okay.
When we were talking about that discussion of the adolescents and stuff, you mentioned, I wrote down a note that you said to remind you to tell the story of Bill Hybels' response to the man on the airplane.
Yes. Okay. Bill Hybels was the founder and the minister until just not too many years ago, because of a sexual indiscretion, a moral slip, an ethical slip, I like to call them. Anyways, he founded that church, and it quickly became a mega church. Willow Creek Church there it started in South Barrington, just south of, I think it's south of Chicago, Illinois. And he was on a plane, and the man with whom he was sitting, and he's, you know, never, he tried to kind of keep his head down on the plane so he could be, just relaxing and getting ready for wherever he was going. And he was at least pretty recognizable. If you were in that, in those circles, you would recognize Bill Hybels or the name at the very least. And so he's, got head down in a book, and this man next to him asks him, starts chatting. And so the question becomes, well, what do you do? And Bill says, okay, he's not going to lie. And he says he's a minister. And the guy then goes on to talk about his faith. And, he doesn't, it's today what we would call I'm into spirituality, but not into religion kind of thing. And he says, I've got I've got a really good, really good grounding and whatnot. And Bill said, well, it's kind of interesting. He said, so how do you measure that? And the guy says, well, I don't know. And Bill says, do you go to church? And the guy says, no, I don't need to go to church. And Bill says, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna knock that. And then he said, well, so he says, let this, humor me here. And he draws a ladder on the plane on a plane plane napkin. And he draws this ladder and he said, so where are you on this ladder? Say, this is the spirit, and, where are you? And the guy puts himself up like at the very top rung, he's really got it. And Bill says, okay. He said, well, where would you put Billy Graham? And the guy's like, oh, and so he puts Billy Graham, up. I said, so what about Mother Teresa? What do you think about Mother Teresa? And she's like, oh man, she's a saint. He said, so where is she on the ladder? And the guy, has to sit there. And Billy said, so would you put her on that top rung? And he's like, well, like maybe on top of the top rung. And he said, so Billy Graham, he's not quite there. So where is he? And he puts him, he said, so where would you put you? And so the guy has to stop and he has to move himself way down the ladder. Mm-hmm. And Bill said, I don't know where you are. I hear where you are with church. Like I understand that. And he said, but I have found the best way to learn about God, and the best way to meet people and to know people who will help me grow is in the church. And so I really like my church. I think it's a really good church. And this is a way that we do this, a way, not the way, right? A way. And he gave him his card and said, listen, if you want more information, call, you'll get a secretary, but call, give her my name, tell her who you are, and she'll connect you. We'll connect. And so he went back and he gave this. He had lots of people's names that she had. And if someone called and it was someone that he'd had that kind of a conversation with. But I love that, how to get back in that. Oh, I don't need to go to church. I'm there. Hey, cool. Indira Gandhi, where's Gandhi in there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's my story of faith and faith development and where we are. And saying, so yeah, and I think I wrote this, and I hate this because I think it's in this class, and I know it's in leadership development. And it is that question that comes out. So where are you? And over again. So warning y'all, over and over again with that in the leader development in Bobby Clinton's phases of leadership development. Over and over again, it's, there are 5 phases, and the 5th is called afterglow, and it's after you've been, your ministry in a congregation or church, whatever that is, has come to a close, but you've raised up mentees and disciples, and so they're still around and with you. We raise disciples, but we keep working with them or in touch with them in some way. And I know I know the ethics of leaving your church when you finish ministry in a church. You do not, as a pastor, you do not have connection with the people that are in that church. You have to step out so that the new minister can be the new minister. And I don't know, that's so hard. I have to say, I have walked that tightrope. My children um, have hated me in the past a couple different times because of that policy. But I hold to it. I lost 1,000 Facebook friends like that. Well, it took me a while after I left regional ministry. I went through and had to take off everybody from Facebook. And still months after that, somebody would pop up and it would be like, oh, no, forgot you, off you go. So yeah, I'm pretty clear on that. But what do you do with these people that have been your babies, right? That you have nurtured from, that you brought into baptism and have nurtured them. So the side of that rule is if you somebody makes contact with the minister, you're able to reestablish or to continue that relationship, but you can never talk about church, and you still can't perform pastoral responsibilities. Yeah, so Bill it's his current board chair. He won't be the board chair after Bill leaves, but Bill has discipled him for the last like 3 years. And this is a guy who never read a Bible, never did anything. And they have a discipleship program, pretty intense discipleship program. And people who are in leadership there have to go through this multi-week one-on-one discipleship, and not one-on-one with Bill. He started it, one-on-one, but then the people who are discipled are expected to disciple others. And Dave has kind of played with it, but this guy has gone from this businessman to, like, I come to church because my wife and has done that, and our children have been raised up in the church, to this guy who said, I want to continue my discipleship program. And so it's okay, we're not going to be able to talk about church, you don't go back, you don't mention my name or anything. But it is that's what leads to Afterglow, is that you're able to sit there and go, hey, here are my babies and look where they are. And now I have grandbabies in the faith, I have great grandbabies in the faith. That's Afterglow. And over again, I have students say, oh yeah, I'm in the Afterglow. Hello, you're like in your second year of ministry. How can you be in Afterglow? So with faith development, oh yeah, I'm an adult. I don't know. So Cody, all the more reason when you said that, I just smiled, because thank you, Cody, for getting us off to an honest start.
I'm nowhere near where I need to be and so I would say, yeah, definitely the adolescent stage, as bad as I'd like to admit it, but we're all growing in Christ. And the funny thing about faith is there's no pinnacle of it. Like, you can't be as spiritual as anybody has ever been, because you're always growing in your faith. And the cool thing about the Bible is it is truly the living word, and every time you read it, you get something else out of it. And it always blows me away that, God, I've read this verse 1,000,000 times and I'm still just like Psalms 139, when you're wonderfully and I knew I was going to forget the words. You're wonderfully and fearfully made.
And wonderfully made, yeah.
Yes. And the day I read that, the day my daughter was born, and just started bawling, because I was like, it had a new meaning to me on that day. And I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. But it was just one of those things where I'd read that and I had something that it meant something totally different 10 years ago. But on this day, it hit me like a rock. And it's like, wow, God knows everything about this girl that I'm holding way before she was even born. And it's a powerful thing to know that we're not reaching to get to a specific spot in our spiritual life. we're always growing. Me as a 3-year minister is still growing, and somebody who's been doing it for 50 years. And
And hopefully that 50-year is still growing as well, right?
right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it may be Rick Warren, but I've heard it so many times from different people that it's this theology that says, or hermeneutic, if you will, right? How we approach scripture and living, that says our life here on earth really is practice for our life living in the kingdom. We're living into the kingdom. So here we're kind of practicing, if you will, or we're learning. It's not, well, learning and practicing, doing, right? But getting ready to be in the fullness of his glory, because we wouldn't really be prepared of that, or be prepared for that in more fullness. So I don't know. I hold on to that one. I like that way of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the moment, that's that, what you're saying bases back to me for what we do as ministers. There it is. That we create Christians, but not disciples.
Mhm.
Right. And if we're not looking at where people are, how are we going to help them to grow? Right. How are we inspiring them to grow? It's critical. We've got to move that into routinization in our congregations, how we're teaching it, how are we teaching people to be elders? Right? How are we raising up elders, looking for those gifts, seeing those gifts, and then setting them apart, kind of, like Jesus did with his disciples. That's I'm on this kick this week of like what Jesus modeled in all of these different ways. And I think I said this last week, I'm still sitting with that Apostles' Creed and, the threefold leadership. Jesus called forgive me if I'm repeating myself on this one, but he, the disciples saw his work, what he was doing, right? And Andrew out there, and he sees Jesus, and he's like, wow, this is so cool. You are that Messiah that we've been hearing about since we were little kids. And he runs home. Andrew's the first evangelist. He runs home and he tells his brother, what's his brother? Simon, who becomes Petros, and he goes home. He's like, man, I just saw this Messiah we've been waiting for. You got to come see him for yourself, right? And so how do they get into, how do they become groupies and come into the, to that inner circle? Because he saw what they were doing, right? So as leaders, what do? I do, you watch. And so then Jesus starts to show them, what they can do. And hey, you too can be doing this stuff that's going to attract the attentions of others. Hey, now we have 72. I keep thinking the folks go out and 2 by 2, hoorah, hooray. Okay. So anyways, so now I'm going to send you all out there and let's see how it goes and come back and tell me what happened. Okay. So they come back and like, this worked and this didn't work. And then there's the man who's like, I asked your people to do this, your guys to do this exorcism, but my kid is still like, look at him falling everywhere. Right. And then Jesus is like, oh man, you guys, come on. And so then he exercises that spirit, and the guys say, wait a minute, why couldn't we do this? Because this one only comes out with prayer and fasting, right? So now it's you do, I watch. All right, we're going to do the course corrections. And then what happens? Jesus dies. He goes to the dead. He's down there. He preaches. He releases dead is one of the teachings that have come forward. Anyways, and then he, in all his power, is resurrected. So he comes back, and he's gone through this. He's been showing them and everything. They're out on their own. But here's that: we don't let our little spiritual babies, right? Our the ones that we've been raising, we can't let them go, because look what happens. They deny you 3 times in less than 3 hours or so, maybe like an hour or 2. And it's like, come on. And so now he's back and he's able to say, he's down there. Oh, I love this, where he's cooking breakfast for him down there, right? He's cooking breakfast with these fish, and they're out there trying to catch fish. He's like, man, I told you I'd make you fisher of men. If you can fish for men, you can fish for fish. So like, okay, try the, oh yeah. Okay, so then they come up and they're like, oh, I think it is Peter, isn't it, who says, oh, it's Jesus. He really did come back. And so they go up there and eat breakfast, and he's still saying, okay, guys, what is this? Peter, you denied me 3 flipping times. Let's talk about that. What happened that you didn't even know what side of the boat to fish on? I showed you that before. What is wrong with you? Let's do some course correction. So, he's there for, in tradition, 40 days before he ascends, and he's doing some course correction with them. Let's do this. Okay, now I think you've got it as much as humanly possible. And so I can go up there. But just in case you forget, in 10 more days, I'm going to send you this thing. It's my Holy Spirit, and it's coming for you, and it's going to be there for you. And anytime you doubt, it's going to be there to remind you. It's going to comfort you and let you know, remind you that I am there. And it's going to be amazing what you can do if you remember to call on it. When you call on that spirit, you're calling on me. And what did they do? It worked, right? And then they go out. The book of Acts starts growing. We're here because of that. And they keep just, the Holy Spirit keeps passing down to remind us, to comfort us, to spur us on. That's that touch, that embrace that we have now. But what do? Like Cody, we started off with that. And I just forget to ask, right? We're not asking, and we're not passing it down. Shame on us, right? We're not passing it down because we're not up there with Billy Graham or Mother Teresa. That's my sermon for the day. This week's sermon. So thanks for listening to it, since I don't have a congregation to preach to. Okay, y'all, I've kept you 10 extra minutes. Anything left for the good of the order? Questions, thoughts? Okay, Cody will be in and out with us as much as he can possibly, because he is doing that camp ministry. That's amazing. Amazing, Cody.
I haven't got to do it the last 2 years. So COVID shut it down 2 years ago. And then last year I stayed home with my baby. So I'm getting back into the camp life again. And it had been I hadn't missed a camp since 2009. And then I missed 2 in a row. So I'm ready to get back at it. So
it's been so cool, because I've been here since 2007 was when I started ministry in the region. And so to get to watch Cody grow up, it's been really cool, and seeing what he's doing now. So my husband, here, you can come say hello to them, since you know a lot of them. For those who don't know,
Bill.
Dr. Bill.
Hey, Cody.
You see Cindy? I think you know Cindy,
Oh, yeah.
maybe Shelly.
Don't think I know Shelly. Shelly, have I had you in class?
She's on mute.
One time, it's been probably last year or something.
Okay, all right. Apologies for not remembering.
Yeah, and Jean. There's Jean. I don't think you've had class with
I don't
Jean,
think so.
maybe. All right.
Good to see you.
Hello there. Good morning.
If you're in the course, you'll have me at least 3 times.
You'll see him.
And you'll either love me or hate me, because I'm not an in-between kind of guy.
It's not by any stretch of the imagination.
I've had my 3 classes with Bill, and now I'm done with him. So
That's right. And he was like, woo!
scratch that off my bucket list.
That's right. So just so you know, I'm retiring in August, at the end of August. And so you can look for me popping into your church somewhere by the end of the year after that. So
He's not retiring. We're having this ongoing conversation.
Okay. I'm retiring from pulpit ministry.
He's leaving congregational ministry.
Right, congregational ministry. But anyway,
he's leaving
so,
the church.
but I've threatened Cody, I'm going to come listen to him preach. I bring my iPad so I can take notes. No, I won't.
He said he's not going to bring his grade book, so that
I'll bring my grade book.
that helped.
There you are.
You want to pray us out
Oh,
while
yeah,
you're standing there?
I could do that.
Okay, great. He's going to pray.
Okay. Gracious God, thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you in a variety of ways. Remind me what class you're teaching.
Spiritual development.
Spiritual development. Okay, you had to think. Huh?
Yeah.
All right, Lord, as we go into into our day and into our week, Lord, we pray that we would see opportunities for developing our hearts, preparing them for work and rest in you. Lord, give us the motivation, give us the momentum, give us the drive to get out there and make a difference in the world, starting with our own hearts and our own lives, that we might be fit vessels, cracked and broken though we may be, nonetheless knit together by your love and your power, so that we can let your light shine through in the lives of others and in our congregations. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Cody, I do have those two things, those two discussions ready for you. There's
Okay.
the third that will be done after I get out of my next meeting, and it'll be
Okay.
for you. Yeah, since Cody's leaving early, I'm opening the conversations for next week for him. But y'all aren't allowed to do it because you are now on Sabbath, ladies. Woministers, female ministers. So woministers, you're now on Sabbath.
What about your Hope for Habits next book chapter?
Yes, you weren't here. So in announcements, I really don't know how these go to y'all. I only have faculty viewing, but I put it in the I put the whole PDF, the book, the workbook, into an announcement. So it's up there where you can download it. And I told them that what's happening is he's submitted it now twice more, and they're still kicking it back. I don't know, it'll probably be a week, 2 weeks maybe before it's publishable, so you won't buy it. My only request is though that you download a copy for you, but and you can show others what you've got, because I do hope that you all will come to use them in your congregations, but just don't distribute copies.
And when the time comes for you to use it in your congregation, buy a copy of the book.
Yeah, it'll be.
Oh yeah,
It'll be ready.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to use it with the elder group.
Way cool. Yeah, it'll be. And it when you print it out, I use grayscale. It's so color heavy. I was, woohoo, this is gonna be so pretty. It's awesome. Yeah, not to download. So I told Cody and Shelly, I haven't seen it out in color. I've only seen it on screen in color because I grayscale it. So put that on draft.
Okay.
Print it out on draft.
Okay.
And grayscale and print draft. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, my friends, I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
bye. Thanks.